My name is Rachel, and I am 31 years old. I live in a quiet city called Eugene in the state of Oregon. The city is surrounded by trees, mountains, and clean rivers. It's a peaceful place with good schools, friendly people, and local shops. I work part-time at a bookstore downtown, and I love reading stories in the soft light of the afternoon sun. I live with my husband Brian, who is 39 years old, and our baby girl Lily. She just turned 1 last month. I also have a 10-year-old son named Ben from my first marriage. Ben is smart, kind, and very close to me. He sees Brian as a father because Brian has been part of his life since he was a little boy. This is my second marriage. I was first married when I was just 21. Things didn't work out. My first husband left soon after Ben was born. It was a hard time for me. I was young, alone, and scared. But life gave me another chance when I met Brian. We met 6 years ago at a small local event. My friend Anna invited me to a summer concert in the park. Families were sitting on picnic blankets, kids were running around, and music played in the background. Brian was standing near the coffee stand. He smiled at me, and I smiled back. That's how it began. He came over and said hello. We talked about music, about the weather, and about where we lived. His voice was calm, and he looked me in the eyes when he spoke. That made me feel safe. After the concert, he asked if we could meet again. I gave him my number. For weeks, we spoke on the phone every night after Ben went to bed. I looked forward to those calls. Brian listened. He didn't judge me. He didn't try to fix everything. He just made me feel like I mattered. We started going out. Sometimes we had coffee at local cafes. Sometimes we walked around the river trail with Ben. Brian played basketball with Ben at the school court, and Ben laughed more than I had seen in a long time. One day, Brian brought me a small bunch of yellow flowers. "They looked like your smile," he said. I didn't know what to say. No one had said something like that to me before. I felt lucky. Brian had never been married before. He didn't have children. He said he was ready for a family. I believed him. A year later, we moved into a small house near the bookstore where I worked. It wasn't big, but it was warm and cozy. I painted the walls soft blue, and Brian planted flowers in the yard. Everything felt perfect until small things began to change. One Saturday, I was cleaning the bedroom closet. I found a box under some old clothes. Inside was a folded letter and a photo. The letter was written in neat handwriting with blue ink. The photo was of Brian and a young woman. They were standing by the coast, arms around each other. They looked like teenagers, maybe 17 years old. I looked at Brian's face in the photo. He looked completely in love. My chest felt tight. I closed the box and sat on the bed. Who was she? That night I asked him. "Her name was Claire," he said after a long pause. "We were together in high school. She was my first love." I nodded and waited. "She didn't wait for me when I went to the army," he added. "She met someone else while I was away. It broke my heart, but that was years ago." "Why do you still have her letter and photo?" I asked. He looked down. Some memories stay with you. That's all. I didn't want to ask more, but something felt different after that day. Not because of the photo or the letter, but because of how he spoke about her, softly, with sadness in his eyes. Days passed. I tried to push the feeling away. We had a good life, a happy baby, a kind son. I didn't want to ruin it with questions from the past, but it didn't go away. Sometimes Brian would sit on the porch in the evenings, staring at the street or the sky. He would hold something in his hand. I looked once. It was the same photo. He didn't know I saw him. One Sunday, we visited Brian's parents for lunch. His mom made her special vegetable soup, and his dad talked about old fishing trips. Everything felt warm and normal until his mom said something. You know, she said to me with a soft smile, Brian was so in love with Claire back in the day. I thought he would never move on. He didn't smile for months after she left. We were all worried. I smiled back politely, but her words stayed in my mind. That night, I asked Brian again, Do you still think about her? He rubbed his eyes and sighed. Rachel, please. That was a long time ago. You're reading too much into it. I wanted to believe him, but the way he avoided looking at me made my heart feel heavy. In December, we went downtown to see the Christmas lights. The streets were full of people. Ben was eating roasted almonds, and Lily was asleep in her stroller. We were walking past a bookstore when Brian stopped suddenly. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at someone across the street. I followed his eyes. There she was. A woman in a red coat, long brown hair, holding a child's hand. A man stood beside her, smiling as he placed his arm around her. They looked like a happy family. Brian didn't move. He stared at her like the world had stopped. I touched his arm. Is that Claire? I asked softly. He didn't answer at first. Then he said, Yes. He didn't speak again for a long time that evening. When we got home, I put the kids to bed and sat beside him on the couch. Do you still love her? I asked. He turned his face away. You're imagining things again. But I saw your face. You looked at her like you missed her. I was just surprised to see her. Are you sure? I asked. He stood up and walked away without another word. I stayed on the couch, holding a pillow close to my chest. My heart felt small and quiet. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Before I share the rest of my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? It gives me strength to know someone is hearing my words. Someone who understands me. Please tell me in the comments. I would really love to know. After that night, things were not the same between us. Brian said nothing about seeing Claire again. He acted like it never happened. He still helped with Lily, still worked his usual shifts at the garage, and still smiled during dinner. But something felt wrong. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. His voice was quieter. His eyes seemed far away. I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself, You're just being sensitive. You're overthinking again. But every time I looked at him, I remembered how he stared at her that night. I remembered how his hand trembled when I asked, "Do you still love her?" And I remembered how he walked away without giving an answer. The silence between us started to grow. We talked less. We laughed less. We slept on the same bed, but it felt like we were on two different sides of the world. One evening, after I put Lily to sleep, I came into the living room and saw Brian sitting alone, looking at his phone. He didn't hear me come in. He was scrolling through photos. I didn't want to look, but my eyes caught a glimpse. It was a picture of Claire. I stood there for a second. I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked into the kitchen. My hands were shaking. I opened the fridge even though I wasn't hungry. I just needed to do something. Anything. Later that night, I asked him, "Why were you looking at her photo?" He looked surprised. "I wasn't. I saw it, Brian. I saw her face on your phone." He put the phone down. "Rachel, please. It's nothing. I was just curious." Curious about what? Her life? Her husband? Her kids? "Why are you doing this?" he said, sounding tired. "It was a moment. That's all." I didn't reply. I just went to bed early. That week, I felt like I was disappearing, like I was just someone who made dinner, cleaned the house, and took care of the kids. I didn't feel like a wife. I didn't feel like the woman he once loved. I wanted to believe that I was still important to him. I wanted to feel chosen, but I didn't. Then something else happened. Brian's mother came to visit us one Saturday morning. She brought homemade cookies and a small gift for Lily. We sat in the living room, drinking tea while Lily played with her toys on the floor and Ben read a book near the window. At first, everything was normal. Then she said something that broke my heart. "You know, Rachel," she said, "Brian never really got over Claire. I remember how he cried after she left. He wouldn't eat for days. He walked around like he had lost a part of his soul. That kind of love. It doesn't happen twice." I forced a small smile, but inside, something cracked. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her words. That kind of love, it doesn't happen twice. Was I just the second choice? Was I the safe choice? Did he marry me because I was there, not because he loved me the most? I didn't want to believe it, but it made sense. The way he stared at Claire, the way he kept her photo, the way he went silent every time I asked about her. The next day, I told Brian we needed to talk. He was watching TV with Ben, so I waited until Ben went to bed. We sat on the porch. The night was cool. The stars were out. It should have felt peaceful, but my heart was heavy. "Brian," I said, "I need you to be honest with me." He looked at me. "Do you still love her?" He shook his head slowly. "Rachel, I married you. I chose you. I take care of our family. Isn't that enough?" "No," I said softly. "Love is not about just staying. It's about feeling connected. It's about wanting to be here. I don't feel like you want to be here anymore." He didn't answer. "I feel like I'm living with a stranger. I feel like you're always thinking about her. You keep her photo. You ask about her life. You look for her in crowds. You don't even notice that I'm hurting. I'm not doing anything wrong," he said, looking away. "But you're not doing anything right either," I replied. "I don't want to be someone who's just there. I want to be the one who matters." Still, he said nothing. Days passed, but nothing changed. Then one afternoon, I found out that Brian had spoken to Claire's brother. I was dropping Lily off at daycare when I ran into a woman who used to know Brian's family. She asked how we were doing, then said, "I heard Brian talk to Claire's brother at the coffee shop last week. Isn't that something?" My heart sank. He hadn't told me. He kept it secret. I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. I just felt cold. That evening after dinner, I asked him, "Did you talk to Claire's brother?" He paused. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't think it mattered." "What did you ask him?" "I just asked how she was doing. That's all." "Do you still care about her?" I asked again. "You're asking the same question over and over," he said. "Why can't you just believe me?" "Because your actions don't match your words," I replied. He stood up and walked away again. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours. Lily was asleep beside me, and the house was quiet. But my mind was full of noise. I thought about our first days, his soft voice on the phone, his laughter in the park, his hand in mine. Where had that man gone? I thought about everything we had built, our home, our kids, our shared life. But I also thought about what I had lost, my joy, my peace, my place in his heart. Maybe he loved me once. Maybe he still cared. But love should never feel like a competition. I should not have to fight against a memory. The next morning, I looked in the mirror. My eyes looked tired. My heart felt tired too. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I needed answers. I needed truth. I needed love that was real, not something left over from a past he couldn't let go of. I made a decision. The next morning, I woke up early. The sky outside was still dark. Rain tapped softly against the window. Lily was still sleeping beside me, her tiny hands curled under her cheek. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the floor for a long time. My heart felt heavy, but also clear. I had been trying to hold on for too long. I had waited for Brian to change. I had waited for him to see me. I had waited for him to let go of his past. But I couldn't wait anymore. That morning, I made breakfast like I always did: eggs, toast, and tea. Ben came into the kitchen, still sleepy. "Morning, Mom," he said. I smiled and kissed his forehead. "Morning, sweetheart." Brian walked in next. He sat down at the table without saying much. I gave him his plate and poured him some tea. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. After Ben left for school and Lily went down for her nap, I asked Brian to sit with me. "We need to talk," I said. He looked at me, silent again. "I've thought about this for a long time. I've cried. I've waited. I've asked you again and again, but I can't keep doing this." "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I'm saying I'm done." He stared at me. "You're leaving?" I nodded. "Yes. I don't feel loved, Brian. I feel like I'm always second place. I feel like I'm living in her shadow." "I told you it's not like that," he said, his hands on the table. "But it is like that," I said gently. "Your heart never fully came to me. You kept it in the past. I don't want to live with someone who's always looking back." He leaned back in his chair. "What about Ben? Lily?" "I will always be their mother," I said. "And I will always make sure they're okay. But I need to take care of myself too. I need to be in a place where I feel seen, where I feel enough." "Where will you go?" he asked. "I'll stay with my cousin for now," I replied. "She has a room for me and the kids. It's not forever, just until I figure things out." He didn't try to stop me. He didn't fight. He just sat there, staring at his tea. And somehow, that made the decision even more clear. If he had truly loved me, he would have held on. He would have tried. But he let me go with silence. That afternoon, I packed a few bags. Ben came home from school and saw the suitcases. "Are we going somewhere?" he asked. I sat him down and told him gently, "Yes, honey. We're going to stay with Aunt Julia for a while." "Why?" he asked, confused. "Because Mom needs some time. Things with Brian haven't been easy, and I need to take care of myself so I can take better care of you and Lily." Ben looked down. He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are we coming back?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But everything will be okay. We'll make a new home. We'll still read books, eat cookies, and laugh at silly movies." He nodded slowly. "Okay." We left that evening. I didn't say goodbye with tears. I didn't slam the door. I simply picked up Lily, held Ben's hand, and walked out the front door. It was raining again. We reached Julia's place just before sunset. She hugged me tightly and didn't ask too many questions. She simply said, "You're safe here. Take your time." That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat on the small couch in her guest room. I finally allowed myself to cry. Not because I was weak, but because I had been strong for too long. I cried for the years I spent feeling not enough. I cried for the love I gave and didn't receive back. I cried for the silence I had lived with. But most of all, I cried because I was free now. In the days that followed, I began to feel like myself again. I woke up early and walked with Lily in the garden. I helped Ben with his homework after school. I started writing in a notebook, something I hadn't done in years. I wrote about how I felt. I wrote about the small moments I missed, my own laughter, my own dreams. I didn't know what the future would look like, but for the first time in a long time, I knew it was my future. Brian called once. He asked how we were. I told him the kids were okay. He asked if I was coming back. I said, "I don't think so." There was silence on the other end. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "Me too," I replied. And that was the last time we spoke. Months passed. Life began to feel light again. I found a new job at a small office. Ben made new friends. Lily started walking, and her giggles filled the room every morning. One evening, I sat with Ben under the stars. He pointed up and asked, "Do you miss Brian?" I thought about it and said, "Sometimes. But sometimes missing someone doesn't mean you should go back to them." "Are you happy now?" he asked. I looked at him and smiled. "Yes, I am." And I meant it. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have everything figured out. But I had something I had lost along the way. Myself. If you liked this story, please like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose yourself over someone you loved? I'd love to hear your story